This is Michael Castaneda of Plastic Audio. So it's been a couple weeks since I've released my 4-part podcasting video series on basics of podcasting, and I wanted to give you a little bit extra content, and I wanted to show you how I set up for a recording session for a podcast. Truth be told, this is going to be very different than the majority of the podcasts that you'll be recording. This is a little bit extra. This is probably overkill once you see how I set everything up. But right now we're just east of Los Angeles at this really great bar, and this is where I do a lot of my recordings for a podcast that I work on called Private Parts Unknown. So let me show you how I get things started. The session that I'm setting up for today involves 5 people total, 2 hosts and 3 guests. This is an overview of the gear I'm using. Here I have mics, stands, cables, and my console. As we walk inside the bar, you can see how I have everything set up in a circle. The 2 hosts are to the right in chairs, and the guests on the sofa to the left. I'll be set up behind the bar to be out of the way. Something I can't stress enough for people who do location recordings for podcasts is to give yourself more than enough time to set up. Figure out all the logistics beforehand: parking, load in, load out, etc. I set up early enough so that once the host or whoever is being interviewed walks in, I can hit record and start doing a mic check for levels. So after all my gear is loaded in, I begin to set up mic stands and place them where the host and the guests will sit. Since I've recorded in here so many times, I know exactly where I want everyone to sit and where to place those stands. If it's your first time in a room, walk around and listen to how the room sounds. Clap your hands and listen to the reflections and decay. Try to put distance between the mics to help cut down on bleed. So after the mic stands are placed, I begin to attach mic clips and mics to the stands. Today I am using the Rode NT5 small diaphragm condenser mic for 3 guests. These are great mics that I've used a lot on instruments and wind ensembles, and I've liked the vocals I've recorded with them, although they are very prone to picking up a lot of plosives. I find myself spending time in post to reduce the abrupt wind gusts to the diaphragm. You might want to buy an additional windscreen or pop filter to help control those. And obviously experiment with mic placement. I'm going to include Amazon affiliate links in the video description in case anyone is interested in looking up the gear I use or wants to purchase them. So after the mic stands are placed, I begin to attach the mic clips and mics to the stands. Next up, I'm using the Rode NT1A matched pair large diaphragm condenser microphones for the 2 hosts. Again, I've used these mics in a lot of different situations and really like them for podcast vocals. There is a lot of discussion about using condenser versus dynamic mics for podcast recordings. Everyone has an opinion on this, and everyone has their favorites. Don't listen to anyone that says you have to have type A or type B of mic. The kind of mic you use depends on your show and the sound you want. Experimenting is something that goes without saying for audio engineers, so I'd recommend you do the same. Take some time to do research and experiment. I'm at the point now where I want to try using dynamic mics for my podcast recordings, and I'm looking to purchase a few from a mic company called Lewitt. They're Austrian design and manufactured in China. I've done a lot of research on them and even contacted them with questions. I'll do an unboxing video and share sound examples once I purchase them. If you're still unsure of what type of mic to use for your show, don't get hung up on it. Don't break the bank buying them. Find something affordable or borrow them. Learn about how the mic captures sound. Learn some mic placement. But most important, do the actual recording. Oftentimes, podcasters prolong the production of their shows because they want perfection. Perfection doesn't exist. Make the show, learn from your mistakes, get better, keep producing. So after I'm done setting up the mics, I run the mic cables from the console to the mics. The console I'm using for this session is a Behringer X32 Compact. This isn't the only recorder I use, and this isn't what I'd recommend others buy for podcasting. This is why I said earlier this setup is overkill. This console has 16 inputs, and no one is recording podcasts and using 16 inputs. I'd recommend someone buy a handheld recorder or ideally an audio mixer used for TV and film. Once I buy one of those mixers, I'll do an in-depth video comparing and contrasting these two types. But for this session, I'm using my X32. So I run the cable, keeping in mind that people will be walking around this area, so I don't want to run the cable in a way that people will trip over it. Run it along edges and leave excess cable wrapped at the base of the mic stand or below the console. And remember, if you're using condenser mics, plug the mics in first, then turn the phantom power on, not the other way around. I'm a huge proponent of having the right tool for the job. And once you start to record a lot of podcasts, you'll quickly realize you need tools in addition to mics, cables, and recorders. The first tool that I use every recording are Apple boxes. They are from TV and film and can be used in a variety of ways. I use them to sit on while recording and often as a stand for my console. The next tool that I always have with me is a Leatherman multi-tool. I usually don't leave home without my wingman. Pliers, knives, screwdrivers, I use them all almost every session. One last thing that I want to mention before I talk about the mic placement for this session. If you're doing location recordings, it's vital that you get all of your gear together and set it aside the night before, using some kind of checklist. I'm telling you this from experience. There is no worse feeling than arriving to a podcast recording and while you're setting up, realizing that you forgot something. Hopefully, if you do forget something, it's minor and you can still go through with the recording. God forbid you forget something and can't do the recording. Again, I'm speaking from experience. I've showed up to do a recording and forgotten my laptop. My laptop. Once I realized it, I sped home on the freeway, sped back, and still had enough time to do the recording. Learn from my mistake. Pack your gear and check it, then check it again. And if you're able to bring extras, do so. If you're recording 2 people for a podcast, don't just bring 2 mic cables. Bring 3 and have 1 extra. What happens when you plug in a mic and one of your cables is bad? Having that third cable, you'll be able to swap out the bad cable and get the recording done. My laptop. I forgot my laptop. So we finally have everything set up, 5 mics. I've recorded in this room a lot. We've done an entire maybe season and a half, 2 seasons of the previous iteration of this podcast. It was called Reality Bites, but now this is the first episode of the rebranding of the show. But I'm going to keep the setup the same because I've recorded in this space a lot. So the 2 co-hosts are going to be right here. I've set up the Rode NT1A. This is actually a matched pair, large condenser microphones. So they're going to sit here and they're going to get that. The guests are all on Rode NT5s. They are pencil condensers, small diaphragm mics, and I've set those up right here. So with the hosts, I tried to keep the microphone as close to this circle as possible. If I put this microphone over here, the co-host is not going to face this way and talk to people. She's not going to turn that way and talk. She's going to be here. The main conversation is going to happen here. Be aware of where you place the mics in relation to everyone else. So with the 2 co-hosts, I put the mics inside because that's going to get most of where they're talking as far as head movement. Same thing with the guests. I want to try and keep it out of the way as much as possible. Since the majority of people are going to be on this side, I kept the mic over here as opposed to keeping the mic here. So she would have to focus this way to talk. She's not going to focus this way. You're gonna go by eyesight. It's all eyesight. So if the person you're talking to is over there, that's where my face is going to be. That's where I'm going to be facing when I talk. So try and keep the mic in that general area. So that's what I did. I set the co-hosts up on the chairs, cushy seats for the guests. I put tables out. I'm going to fill that up with water. When you talk for over an hour, your mouth gets dry, you're going to want water. This is all extra, but it really does add a really nice touch to it. And then as far as where I'm at back here, so this is going to be where I'm at for the recording. I'm going to be back here. That way I have eyes on everyone, mainly with me and one of the co-hosts, Courtney. She'll look at me and ask for different things, or there's got to be that communication.
ladies.
We're ready.
Let's start. If you guys could each introduce yourselves and a little bit about yourself.
Hi, so I'm Naomi, and I have been a stripper here for, I want to say 7 years. I took a couple breaks in between, but working on finishing my BFA, and that's about it. I do various creative projects.
Love it.
Including, helping with Soldiers of Pull is what I'm helping with now.
I'm Antonia. Been a stripper and sex worker since before any of you listeners were even born. And activist, sex worker, writer, professor. That's about it.
I'm Domino Ray. I'm a stripper and a writer and an EMT and a pole dance instructor. And I was born and raised in Atlanta. I came to LA in 2005, and yeah.
Rad. So one of the things when I was talking to Antonia earlier, you mentioned you guys are you represent 3 different decades of dancers.
Yes, we do.
How did you all come together?